Would you come sit right here for me? Do you like to color? You said when you were sitting in the car you heard something?
Yeah, it was like going like zzz, like somebody was lasering somebody.
In March 2014, a quiet, early morning turned horrific for 6-year-old Zaniah Jackson.
There was blood splatter in his room. On his floor.
And some on his floor? Tell me everything you heard from his room.
A gunshot.
You heard a gunshot.
He took them to outside and just shoot them.
Okay, did somebody tell you that or did you see that?
I see that.
Remarkably, Zaniah did not scream or cry out, a decision that may have saved her life. Instead, she stayed out of sight, absorbing every detail she could. It was a display of astonishing composure for a child so young, but one born of sheer survival instinct. Unbeknownst to the killer, this little girl had seen crucial clues that would later crack the case wide open. Clues that would transform her into the investigation's most important witness. Zaniah's courage would be key to solving the double homicide, despite the danger it posed to her.
911, what's your emergency?
I have 2 dead people at the back of my store by my dumpster.
The next day, police in Galveston County, Texas responded to a gruesome call. A delivery truck driver had found 2 bodies dumped behind a convenience store dumpster on Bolivar Peninsula. The victims, 2 young women, were discovered stacked on top of one another behind the trash bin in a deserted area.
The location of the bodies was at Fisherman's Cove store. Behind this store, there's an abandoned hotel. I knew this case was going to be a tough one.
During the scene investigation, we were also able to find some tire marks in the parking lot. The marks left behind had an extreme yaw mark, which is when a vehicle is at a high rate of speed and turns, and we could follow that out into the street. The lack of blood at the scene led us to believe that the bodies were dumped from another location,
but we didn't know where.
Detectives found a blood-spattered wooden window shutter near the bodies, propped against a building 20 feet away. Even more significant, on that piece of shutter was a bloody fingerprint, a clue that would later become pivotal. Investigators also gathered any other debris, hoping something could identify the victims or the killer. Within hours, police had tentatively identified the 2 victims as 24-year-old Britney Cosby and her girlfriend, 24-year-old Crystal Jackson, both from Houston.
The bodies of the women were found behind a store in the 700 block of State Highway 87 on Port Bolivar this morning.
I noticed that one was laying on her back and she had what was a severe gunshot wound to the right temple with an exit wound coming out from behind her left ear. The other was laying on her stomach with a sheet wrapped around the head. We saw that her eyes were swollen and bruised, and it was immediate that she'd been a victim of some kind of blunt force trauma. It was definitely our feeling that it was overkill.
It took somebody with such great force to break her neck with that blow that we knew it had to be anger, it had to be personal.
With the victims tentatively identified, detectives now faced a heartbreaking task: notifying the families. On March 8, officers arrived at the Houston home of Reverend Ivan Jackson and his wife Mary, Crystal Jackson's parents, to deliver the devastating news of their daughter's death.
Late on at night, my husband said, something don't feel right. I called whatever hospital came to my mind, police stations that I could think of. Then I told my husband, well, let's just call the dreaded morgue. No signs of her there. I said, okay, that's a good thing.
It's a good thing, yeah.
Where are you, child? I'm saying to myself, where you at?
When they told me that my baby was dead, it hurted me. I'd never been hurt as bad as I was hurt that day. I never dreamed that I would have to bury my own child. I couldn't do nothing but go in the house and hug my granddaughter.
Their first instinct was to hold their 5-year-old granddaughter Zaniah tight, offering whatever comfort they could to the now orphaned child. Across town, Britney Cosby's family was also grappling with unimaginable shock.
When I knocked on the door, the first person I made contact with was Britney's great-grandmother.
My name?
Yes, Miss Ma'am.
My name is Annie Lee Cosby.
She confirmed that Britney was her great-granddaughter and she had been missing for the last day or so. While we were there, Britney's father, James Cosby, who also resided with Mrs. Cosby showed up.
What's going on?
Are you the father? Brittany's dad?
Yeah.
Brittany's dad.
Just have a seat.
What happened?
That's what we're trying to find out.
Take a minute, but we're gonna really need to talk to you so you can help us so we can find out who did this, okay? What kind of vehicle is it? It's a Kia. A Kia SUV.
Are they having any problems with anybody? I mean, any bad relationship breaks up, anything like that you know, that anybody that's mad at either one of them?
I mean, I don't know.
With no immediate suspects or leads, detectives began by interviewing those closest to the victims. They hoped family members might shed light on the young couple's recent activities or any conflicts. In speaking with Crystal's parents, investigators learned of a tense family dynamic. Crystal and Britney had been dating for 2 years, and Crystal's father, Ivan, strongly disapproved of their lesbian relationship.
So you never even would let Britney come in the house?
The only reason I let her come in the house, when she come in the house, she go sit right there where you sitting.
Okay.
And I didn't like that. I used to tell my daughter, I say, you ain't gay, you just up in the head. You know, I used to tell her that all the time. Yeah. You damn straight, because she just experimenting on something. Mm-hmm. She don't know what she get into.
I accepted it, but he couldn't. It brought friction between both of them.
I didn't like her changing her sexual orientation, but it wasn't nothing I could do because she was grown. I told Crystal that lesbian stuff would take her out of here. I knew it.
On the night before the murders, Britney and Crystal had stopped by the Jacksons' home to pick up little Zaniah and proudly show off a brand new Kia Sorento SUV they just purchased together.
She wanted me to come out to see her new car. Me being stubborn as I am, I wouldn't even get up out the chair because I told her not to get the vehicle in the first place. But the night that she left the house, all I could do was look at her until I loved her. And my daughter said, "Dad, I love you too, bye."
This background immediately put Reverend Ivan Jackson on the investigators' radar. Detectives couldn't ignore the possibility that Ivan might have been involved, either out of homophobic rage or some family dispute. However, as a routine step, they asked Ivan if he owned any firearms. Ivan did have a handgun, but ballistics testing later showed that the bullet recovered from Crystal's body did not match the caliber of Ivan's weapon, nor did any other evidence link him directly. In fact, Ivan, despite his past bitterness, was cooperative with police from the start. In a crucial move to clear his name, he consented to let detectives interview his 5-year-old daughter, Zaniah, who had been with Crystal and Britney on the day they disappeared. While forensic techs continued processing evidence, investigators turned their attention to little Zaniah Jackson, the only living eyewitness.
Can you explain why investigators wanted to interview Zaniah?
They had to talk to her because she was actually in the vicinity when her mom was murdered. Britney and Crystal were planning to take her to school that morning. And investigators wanted to know what Zaniah heard the day that her mom was killed.
Zaniah, what is the first thing you do when you get to school?
Eat breakfast.
And then what happens after you eat breakfast? Tell me everything that happened from that morning to the time you went to sleep.
The morning when I was getting ready for school at nighttime, my mama was in the car with me and her, and my mama said, "Stay in the car," and I stayed in the car. I said I was taking my mom so long, so I went in there to find out, but nobody was in there.
You said when you were sitting in the car you heard something?
Yeah, it was like going like zzz, like somebody was lasering somebody.
Like somebody was what?
Lasering.
Tell me who all was at that house when you were there going to sleep.
It was just me and her mama, and I forgot the other boy name.
The other boy's name?
That's Brittany's brother.
Brittany's brother? You don't remember Brittany's brother's name? Is he big like me or little like you?
He's tall.
He's tall.
The detectives were stunned by the horrific details pouring out of the mouth of a 5-year-old. Zaniah's account was chilling, yet absolutely critical. However, some parts were difficult to interpret. She kept referring to a stranger as the attacker. This puzzled investigators because if the murders happened at the Cosby family home, as Zaniah's story suggested, with Britney attacked inside and Crystal just outside, who could this stranger be? Britney's great-grandmother Annie and her father James Cosby also lived in that home. Surely, if an unknown intruder had broken in and committed murder, James or Annie would have mentioned it when speaking to police. Yet neither James nor the elderly Annie had said anything about a break-in or any disturbance that night. In fact, James claimed he had slept through the night in another part of the house and noticed nothing amiss until the women were reported missing. This inconsistency raised immediate concerns. Was Zaniah genuinely describing an unknown attacker? Or was her young mind attempting to process what she witnessed in a more manageable way? It dawned on detectives that the stranger might not have been a stranger at all. The only other adult male known to be at the residence was James Cosby, Britney's own father. Could it be that James was the one Zaniah saw? Perhaps the little girl, in shock, could not fully process that her grandfather was capable of such violence, so she labeled him a stranger. Detectives started to view James Cosby in a very different light. His portrayal as a grieving father was becoming less convincing, sparking suspicions that he possessed more knowledge about the murders than he admitted. Investigators decided to dig deeper into James Cosby's whereabouts and behavior around the time of the crime.
Just as detectives' suspicions were circling toward James Cosby, hard evidence emerged that made their case much stronger. 6 days after the murders, forensic analysts got a match on that bloody fingerprint lifted from the broken shutter found at the dump site. The fingerprint was a match to James Larry Cosby, the victim's father himself. This was the game-changing clue investigators needed. If James had no involvement as he claimed, how could his fingerprint end up in blood on a piece of wood discarded near his daughter's dumped corpse? It was now clear that James Cosby had touched an object at the crime scene, likely during the disposal of the bodies.
Around the same time, another clue surfaced that deepened the intrigue. Surveillance camera footage from the night of the murders came to light, showing the victim's silver Kia Sorento SUV on the road.
The girls had just purchased their first vehicle, which was a 2006 Kia Sorento. We knew from what Mr. Cosby had said they left around 7:30, 7:35 that morning. So we wanted to try to get any video that we could anywhere in that area showing that vehicle.
In the grainy video, the SUV was clearly being driven by a lone man, and notably, neither Britney nor Crystal was visible in the vehicle. The driver's face was not clearly identifiable, but the build and posture looked like it could be a man in James Cosby's age range. The investigation dramatically shifted as James Larry Cosby, Britney Cosby's 48-year-old father and a convicted sex offender released 5 months prior, became the prime suspect. Forensic evidence linked him, but more was needed for a murder charge. Nearly a week after the murders, on March 13, 2014, friends and family of Britney Cosby and Crystal Jackson organized a candlelight vigil to mourn the beloved couple. The vigil took place in Houston, with dozens of people holding candles, sharing memories, and calling for justice. James Cosby attended the vigil, standing among the crowd as a bereaved father.
We need to find out what's happening. The detectives are doing what they do. They've been keeping us informed as much as they can, but there's nothing yet.
However, several attendees quietly noted that James's behavior was oddly unemotional. He appeared utterly unmoved by the outpouring of grief. As the vigil was underway, a development was unfolding back at the Cosby family residence. Detectives had returned to the house that evening, intent on speaking again with James's grandmother, 92-year-old Annie Lee Cosby, and any other relatives there. James wasn't home. He was still at the vigil, but at the house, the officers met Cora, a cousin of Annie's who also lived nearby. Cora seemed nervous as detectives asked routine follow-up questions. She kept glancing over at Annie and around the house. Finally, Cora made a subtle gesture, motioning the investigators to step outside with her. Once safely out of earshot of the others, Cora lowered her voice and confided that something had been deeply bothering her. She explained that in the days immediately after Britney and Crystal went missing, she'd noticed James acting strangely around the house.
When I looked around, I noticed that the carport was spotlessly clean, and I had never seen it clean before, never. Even though I had had my grandkids to move trash out of there, it was always debris, something that needed to be cleaned up.
Cora whispered that James never showed interest in cleaning that space until that week, and the sudden, meticulous scrubbing struck her as extremely suspicious. Following Cora's tip, investigators searched the carport. They found a peculiar arrangement of bricks on the driveway, hinting that something was being concealed.
Why would there be 5 bricks laying here in the carport? There's got to be a purpose for them being there, and what I saw just took my breath away. There was what appeared to be 4 to 5 drops of blood on the ground. I immediately began to look even closer at that point, which is when I noticed 2 more drops of blood up near the door face. That led me to believe that we may be standing in our crime scene.
The officers radioed in their discovery. Rather than wait, they made a decisive move, heading straight to the vigil to arrest James Cosby on the spot. They moved in and placed him under arrest, right there at the candlelight vigil. Attendees gasped as Britney's father, James, was arrested for her murder. With James now in custody, investigators secured a warrant and returned to thoroughly search the Cosby home and garage. Armed with luminol and other forensic tools, the crime scene unit went over every inch of the property. What they found confirmed their worst suspicions. In the garage room where James had been staying, luminol revealed extensive blood spatter invisible to the naked eye. Britney Cosby's blood was everywhere, on the floor, on the walls, soaked into the carpet. It was clear that this room had been a primary murder scene where Britney had been bludgeoned to death.
Blood drops on the door jamb as you come into the house. Once we made entry into James's bedroom, we started finding blood drops and blood spatter everywhere we were looking. Once we processed the area, we were able to see how much was fluorescing, and to us it was bright like fireworks on the 4th of July. Whatever the bloodletting event was, quite a large amount of blood was spilled in that room.
Yeah, since we're down here at this office, I have to do, I do this to everybody. I read what's called your advisor rights. Are you familiar with what that is? Yeah, Miranda rights.
I've been watching enough TV shows to know that you need to say Miranda rights. That means you under arrest.
Following his arrest, James Cosby was interrogated about the blood-soaked garage, hidden driveway stains, bloody fingerprint on the shutter, and SUV surveillance footage. Despite this mountain of evidence, James maintained a cold, stony demeanor. He refused to admit any role in the murders.
Were you aware that we were back at the house today?
Today?
Can you explain to me why or how in your room where you stay that carpet throughout that room and furniture throughout that room saturated with fresh blood? You've been in that room, sleeping in that room with your daughter's blood on the carpet.
I didn't know that it's like that. You say I'm.
You can't miss it.
I ain't seen no stain. I would see some stains. I would see some.
She had the supreme beat out of her. You explain that. You explain it. That's your daughter's head smashed in. Thrown away like a garbage. That's your daughter. This is your daughter's brains coming out of the hole in her head.
And James, you did it.
And you did it.
You did it.
Detectives pressed hard, their voices dripping with disgust and anger. How could a father do this to his own child? James, however, offered little information. He offered brief responses and, at times, a shrug, as if the evidence presented held no significance to him.
Everything points back to James Larry Cosby Jr. And you expect us to believe that James Larry Cosby Jr. don't know. You need to man up. Finish a sentence for me. I'm going to start a sentence. I want you to finish it.
What is it?
I did not do this because...
I'm not finishing that.
What are you going to tell us?
Not that.
Can you explain to me how your print wound up over there where those bodies were recovered in Fort Bolivar?
My print was on what?
The scene.
Okay.
Tell me what's your thoughts?
I have not. I can't make sense of that.
This crime somehow originated at that house.
So what can you tell us about the house?
Nothing.
What else we found on the scene? James Larry Cosby Jr.'s sheets wrapped around his daughter's head. And you expect us to believe that James Larry Cosby Jr. don't know.
That's the sheet I sleep on. Well, the sheet I used to sleep on.
You wrap her up because you couldn't stand to look at her face and see what was done?
Why did this happen?
I can't tell you why it happened.
His answers didn't make a lot of sense. He would not come clean, would not confess. He just never got past that breaking point.
So at the end of this investigation, we had collected 307 pieces of individual evidence. This was the most evidence that I'd collected for any crime scene that I'd worked up until that point.
Without a confession, prosecutors were not ready to charge him with murder that night. Instead, James Larry Cosby was formally charged with 2 counts of tampering with evidence, specifically for moving and dumping the bodies. This was a strategic move. The tampering charges, with a hefty $500,000 bail, ensured James would remain locked up while investigators strengthened their murder case.
Investigators are building their case against James Cosby, and they believe he not only knew about the violent deaths of his daughter and her girlfriend, he tried to cover them up. Their bodies were found near a dumpster in Port Bolivar, but investigators are calling Cosby's Houston home a secondary crime scene. They say inside they recovered several items that could be weapons, including a hammer.
Reverend Ivan Jackson, Crystal's father, once briefly a suspect himself, became an outspoken figure in the media, expressing his anguish and calling for justice. In interviews, Reverend Jackson emphasized that while he hadn't agreed with his daughter's lifestyle, but he would not kill his daughter and Britney for that.
I knew that the truth would soon come out. I really wasn't afraid because I had not done anything. I hadn't committed a crime or anything. I carry a lot of guilt in me because the things I should have said to my daughter, I didn't say when I had the chance. Watching them put my baby in that vault and have to leave her at that cemetery was the hardest thing that ever happened to me.
By late 2014, detectives had a much clearer picture of what likely happened on that fateful night. Zaniah's initial mention of a stranger remained puzzling. Investigators decided to re-interview her for clarification. Now that some months had passed and Zaniah had received counseling, she was able to articulate her memories with even more detail. This time, they asked more specific questions aligned with what the evidence indicated.
Did you ever hear anything from his room?
A gunshot.
You heard a gunshot. Tell me how you know it was a gunshot.
Because he just, in his room, he just said, he took them to outside and just shoot them.
Okay, did somebody tell you that or did you see that?
I see that. There was blood splatter in his room.
Okay, tell me where the blood splatter was in his room.
On his bed.
You saw it on his bed? Okay, did you see it anywhere else?
On his floor.
Some on his floor?
He just decided to kill my mother and his daughter.
When asked directly if she saw her grandfather James that morning, Zaniah nodded, tears in her eyes. The truth clicked into place. Zaniah had indeed witnessed James attacking Crystal. She just couldn't label him as such initially, due to trauma and disbelief. Now her story aligned with the evidence detectives had gathered.
Crystal took Zaniah, placed her into the car. At the same time, on the inside of the house, James Cosby and Britney Cosby became involved in a physical altercation, at which time James Cosby snapped and beat Britney to death. Crystal walked back into the house and was watching this take place and immediately ran out the side door to the back of the vehicle, which is where James Cosby, we believe, caught up with her and then shot her in the head.
Even after James Cosby was clearly implicated as the murderer, one haunting question remained. Why? What could possibly drive a father to slaughter his own daughter and her partner in cold blood? The answers, as investigators uncovered, were as petty as they were disturbing. A combination of hatred, jealousy, and entitlement that defy reason. James had never approved of Britney's relationship with Crystal, likely due to homophobia and the disruption it caused in his household.
He have said it to me too a few times that he didn't like the idea of her being gay.
He was an ex-convict who, after years in prison, came home to find his daughter running the household and his role diminished.
Annie Lee Cosby had changed her will and left everything to Britney because Britney was already taking care of everything while her dad was not present in the residence.
He had asked Annie to co-sign for a vehicle and she'd refused, and then she turned around and co-signed a vehicle for Britney and Crystal. And it starts to paint a picture of jealousy, pure jealousy.
When James Larry Cosby finally went to trial in August 2016, prosecutors laid out the evidence of his crimes in meticulous detail. The jury heard 7 days of testimony, and it took them only about 3 hours of deliberation to reach a verdict.
And we have breaking news from Galveston County. A jury there has just found James Larry Cosby guilty of capital murder for killing his daughter and her girlfriend. We're told because this is a capital murder case, Cosby will automatically receive a life sentence without parole, and he will be formally sentenced tomorrow morning.
In the aftermath of the trial, the focus turned to healing and caring for the one bright light that remained, Zaniah Jackson, Crystal's little girl who had survived unimaginable trauma. Immediately after the murders, Reverend Ivan and Mary Jackson, Crystal's parents, took full custody of their granddaughter. The lead investigator, Detective Danny Kitchens, had been so touched by Zaniah's courage that he became Zaniah's godfather.
It's a relief. What we did for those families.
As the years passed, Zaniah grew from a quiet, traumatized 5-year-old into a resilient teenager. In 2021, when Zaniah was about 12, MTV News sent journalist Dometi Pongo to interview her as part of a special report. In the interview, Zaniah spoke with wisdom beyond her years. Despite the pain of her loss, Zaniah had found a way to channel it into something positive.
A lot of kids haven't been through some of the things that you've seen and have been through. How has it been kind of putting that behind you as you've been growing up throughout school?
I just have to think about it like a good way, you know?
How often do you think about Mom?
Almost every day.
It's every day.
Cause like sometimes you're like, I wish she was here so we could do this and do this, and like how it was when I was little and how she would treat me and all that kind of stuff.
Yo, what do you remember about the day you lost Mom?
I was going on a field trip.
You going on a field trip that day?
Yeah, I was going to the rodeo.
Wow, wow.
So that makes me remember that day even more because it's like, I go to the rodeo almost every year with my school. So it's like, today is the day that it happened.
Do you like going to the rodeo still, or?
I do.
Yeah.
Cause I'd be like, yo, me and my mom could have done this and I can pretend like she's there and we can just do this stuff there, you know?
That's so cool. I love how bright and positive you are about it, man.
Out of unthinkable darkness, Zaniah has chosen to see the light, to be that seed that grows into something strong and positive. Zaniah Jackson's unwavering spirit offers a beacon of hope that from the depths of tragedy, one can rise, determined to shine a light for others in the darkness. We hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider becoming a channel member. Members receive amazing perks, including the ability to choose our next story. Thank you for your support and for watching.